Grants and Contracts with the Family League of Baltimore. We welcome you to our second annual Virtual Funded Partners Week. We are very excited about you joining us this week. And our goal is to provide you with a wealth of information and tools to prepare you for our FY22 partnership. We want to ensure that our partnership is a successful one and that our community outreach efforts and support programs services are delivered efficiently and effectively to the children, youth, adults, families, and communities of Baltimore City. We will be emphasizing throughout the week our core organizational objectives during this training, which are to strengthen communities and organizations like yourselves, influence systems through our public policy advocacy work, and lead collaborative partnerships to better serve the community, which you have been brought on board to do, some of you year after year. Our programs, professional development, data and evaluation, impact and information technology groups will be joining us over the next several days to provide you with information-packed presentations that you will find extremely useful. This year, we've included an exciting addition to our agenda, allowing presentations by two of our top partnering organizations who can provide you with some insight on creating an optimal experience as a partner with Family League and what you need to know with tips and processes for success. These organizations will be able to provide some tidbits and nuggets to their success that you may be able to incorporate as well. Today's agenda presentations will include a welcome and remarks from our dynamic president and CEO, Damon Millard. Under Damon's leadership, we have been able to continue to receive significant funding and remain the state's largest local management board. Leveraging resources and supports and investing in community-based organizations like yourselves to get the work done and done successfully. Dismantling systematic barriers and helping to further bridge the gap that we know exists in the communities of the city. Following Damon's remarks, you will be receiving presentations from our communications, grants and contracts, and finance teams, along with our legal consultant. Each of them will be providing you with critical details about contract guidelines and compliance, site visits, mandatory reporting, budgets, reimbursements and payments, and the importance of background checks in the work that you do. There will also be an opportunity for question and answers at the end of the session today. So we are asking that you provide your questions through the chat function of our session, and we will answer them in the order that they are received at that time. Lastly, I wanted to advise everyone that this virtual meeting is being recorded and will be made available to each of you via email by close of business each day. All sessions will also be made available on our website on Friday, August 20th. As stated earlier, we are quite excited about this week and the sessions that we have in store for you. I'll now turn it over to Damon. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Damon. Greatly appreciate it. So good to see all of you. Some of you I've known for quite some time. Some of you are some new faces. So welcome to the family. I want to give a special shout out to the Grants and Contracts team. As Dawana had mentioned, this is the second installment in terms of the virtual session, but actually it's our third kind of funded partners week that we're having, but the second virtual experience. Also want to recognize Jillian Harp, also Clifton Williams, as well as Cherie Moore for all the great work that they do in supporting grants and contracts for us. Before we get started in terms of me with my comments, I want to just take this time to honor, acknowledge a longtime funded partner who is not with us this year. His name is Bishop Douglas Miles. Bishop Miles passed away 2 weeks ago. He was a great leader and also served as a mentor for me, provided me with a lot of sound advice over the years, and has always been an ardent champion in support of community, and always been a very big supporter in terms of Family League as an organization, and pushed and held us accountable, as well as myself in my personal capacity. So if you wouldn't mind joining me in a moment of silence to honor his memory. Thank you. So in the spirit of Bishop Miles and Koinonia Baptist Church, Koinonia is from a Greek phrase that you're looking at in terms of deep fellowship. And as a part of our work as an organization, we've gone through a process of strategic planning where we look at basically our network as partners as a part of this work. And it is deep fellowship that we have engaged in. When we first started this process and having these funded partner conversations, annual meetings, it was really to demystify all the key issues that you might see in terms of grants and contracts, financial reporting. I see on Thursday, we have a session regarding the ABCs of the system. That is our grant management system funding track. Depending on who you're talking to, it might actually be as gruesome as it might sound with the title. But that's why we're having this conversation and having the ability to walk you through all the key concepts and some of the challenges, really to make things easier for you as a part of this process. As I mentioned before, we went through strategic planning in the midst of a major global pandemic, and really wanted to transform our ways to not necessarily just have a transactional relationship with you and community, but more importantly, one that's transformational. We recognize that moving the needle and improving impact in community does not fall on Family League's shoulders alone, does not fall on the mayor's office as well as the governor's office or private philanthropy, but it takes a collective will of all of us. And so our job is to really help you do your job in serving our greatest gift, and that is our children, youth, and families within our city, and to do it to the best way possible. Within that, I just want to make sure that I take this time to commend all of you who were able to operate during the course of the pandemic. Obviously, various scopes of work had shifted and had changed in major ways. We were forced to be innovative and come up with very creative ways to provide support with community. But through it all, you all stepped up to the challenge, and we really appreciate what you were able to do. During this time, we also were able to make some major headways in innovative funding to expand our work within the maternal and child health home visiting programs by offering housing supports. Also getting a little bit deeper in terms of providing support for recreation centers throughout the city of Baltimore. We had a chance to make a major announcement with $1 million going to provide quality support and programming within 48 recreation centers throughout the city of Baltimore. Also, the issues as it relates to food insecurity. We know that some community school coordinators actually showed up within communities and was actually delivering meals and box lunches, as well as computer equipment directly to the homes of family members within their respective school communities. I've heard a resounding voice from members of the city council, from the mayor himself, that wanted to express their deep and profound appreciation for the network of our partners who are able to step up to the plate and provide that level of support. But it gets beyond just in terms of monetary investment. Really, it's been about for us in terms of hearing and providing agency to community voice. We had partnered with Morgan State University and their School of Community Health and Policy, which actually conducted a community health needs assessment across the city of Baltimore, which you might see in terms of some of our great infographics is the butterfly. That was actually one of the co-principal investigators of the study, Dr. Lawrence Brown, who coined the phrase of Baltimore being in a black butterfly if you were able to put an overlay of the map of concentrated poverty over the city. We're making sure that we're actually dedicating and deploying our investments to the areas of greatest need within the city. And we were able to hear directly from community members, not just in terms of practitioners and providers, but parents from youth, obviously in terms of caregivers, grandparents, directly to see, basically what it is in terms of that they feel that the needs are in terms of providing support in improving the outcomes and putting families in a position where they're going to thrive. This is going to serve as our basic foundation for our strategic planning for the next 3 to 5 years. And we appreciate you being here as a part of that process. As Family League marks its 30th year in existence, we are a part of Generation Y, and we're stretching ourselves to ask the questions of why not? When I first came into this role, We were going through a process where we were always doing the things because we've always done them this way. And it didn't necessarily mean that it was of benefit not only to community, but to our partners as well. We've heard your feedback, and we really pushed and stretched ourselves to be a lot more innovative, and including this kind of transparent platform and process, so you're able to hear and for us to unpack each major component of our organization and of our portfolios of work. So what I ask you to do is soak it all up like a sponge. There are no insignificant questions, trust me. I also want to express my appreciation for each time that we send out a survey and that you respond to it. I would let you know that I read them. I read your comments, I read your feedback, and we also make sure that we utilize that to help guide our work moving forward. So as a part of this process, I just want to thank you as we're moving forward in this destination towards transformation, and we're happy that you're able to join us as a part of that journey. Thank you and have a great week.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Damon, for your remarks and details about where we're going, how we're going, what we're doing, and where we're going and how we're doing. So impact, innovation, and transformation, exciting things in store for sure. Thank you so much. Next, we'll have a presentation from our communications team. I'll turn it over to Rachel Graham and Alexandra Leonard to discuss their role, requirements, and collaboration with you as our partners.
Thank you so much, Dawana. It's a pleasure to join you all today. I am Rachel Graham. I serve as the Communications Director for Family League of Baltimore. And Alexandria Leonard serves as our Digital Media and Design Coordinator. And it is a pleasure to talk to you today about what COMS does and how we support the organization and hopefully are able to support you. And so the chief question is who we are and what do we do? So we are essentially responsible for the management of Family League of Baltimore's brand. We serve as thought partners for teams to support the achievement of organizational and team goals and to make sure that all materials are in alignment with organizational brand. But most importantly, we're here to share the stories of the great work that Family League does together with its funded partners. So we're gonna cover right now our brand standards overview, just to kind of give you the basis of the why of some of the things that we do to kind of get you a little bit more intimately aware of our brand standards and to cover how you can specifically work with us as a team. So I always start our internal branding discussions and communications orientations with one of my favorite quotes from the poet Audre Lorde. And it is, if I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched in other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. And you're probably wondering, what in the world does that have to do with communications and branding? Well, a brand is how you identify yourself so that it is very clear to those that work with you and work around you who you are. And so we're very clear as to who we are as an organization, what our role is in the community, and how we wish to have folks see the outward manifestation of what it is that we value and care about. And so as Damon talked about in this past few, about 18 months, we have in fact been working to develop our 3-year strategic plan, formerly known as Transformation 2020, and now more realistically known as Transformation 2024. It's rooted in the community health needs assessment that we did with Morgan State University. Out of that, a few things changed. We revised our mission statement. That mission statement is a little bit more in line with where we see ourselves going and growing as an organization. It also serves as the foundation for the work and provides clarity on the internal improvements, which we must focus to successfully support tangible outcomes in our 3 priority results areas. Pardon me, a little technical difficulty. That we'll focus on between 2021 and 2024, and ultimately will bring about a refined bold goal and make it much greater reality, and bring us closer to being a reality. Although that has changed, a few things have stayed the same, and those are our core values. While we've revised our mission and our bold goal, we remain committed to the values of stewardship, performance, trust, respect, innovation, and equity. And all of this is in support of Transformation 2024. If you wish to learn more about Transformation 2024, you can visit our website, familyleague.org/transformation 2024 to learn more about that. And so I know there are folks that are probably chuckling to see this. This is probably one of the most important things I like to leave people with around our brand. We are Family League of Baltimore. There is no the. Just remember that as you're referring to the organization. It might seem like a little thing, but imagine someone calling you by the wrong first name. It's happened to me throughout my life. And so we just like to put that in there as a reminder to our partners that we are Family League or Family League of Baltimore. We did like Prince did, we dropped the a few years ago. So we are in fact Family League of Baltimore. According, talking about our brands again, these are our logos. We ask that if you would like to utilize Family League's logo, that you please reach out to us at communications@familyleague.org. There's also space on our website underneath media where you can put in a specific request to utilize the logo. We just like to make sure that one, it's utilized properly. And so, we want to make sure that you can see here, you don't squish it, you don't warp it. That you're using the correct manifestation of it, and we can help you in navigating that. So let's talk a little bit about our digital presence. This is important because this is the space where we talk about our stories, and our stories are your stories. Without your work, Family League's work would not be in existence. And so as we go through this, we want to make sure that we make you aware of the various spaces where we talk about who we are as an organization and the wonderful work that we are able to do together with our funded partners. So the first stop is our website. About 2 years ago, we updated our website to be a little bit more engaging and to provide information that is really, really important to the community as well as to our funded partners. A couple of spaces I'd love to bring your attention to. Strengthening organizations. Under that is where you'll find the funded partners page. That's where we include information about funding opportunities that we provide, as well as funding opportunities that are provided through some of our other partners in the community. You'll also find under strengthening organizations, a link to our professional development page, where we try to keep up to date a regular calendar of all the things that we are providing to you to strengthen you as an organization so that you can, serve the community as best possible. You'll also see there's an About Us page that provides all the information on who we are as an organization and a number of different spaces. So I encourage you in your leisure to go visit familyleague.org and get up to date and stay up to date. I would even bookmark it because you're going to find that it's a wonderful resource to keep up to date on what's going on with Family League. Oops. We also have a number of external newsletters that we put out. And this is the calendar of those newsletters. These are also spaces where you can get information about the organization, but also spaces where we can potentially share information about the wonderful work that you're doing. Again, at your leisure, take a look at these. There's space on our website. There's a button at the top that says stay up to date. And you can click on that to specifically subscribe to the variety of newsletters that we do make available. We are on all, well, I don't want to say all four because every day there's a new digital platform that shows up on social media, but we are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I forget one, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, I'm sorry. And so this is our Facebook page. This is where you can find us on Facebook. This is our Instagram page, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And these are the handles if you wish to follow us. And also so that you know how to tag us, which I'll touch on the next slide. But these are the spaces where we are. We have a pretty good following, pretty good audience, and pretty decent engagement. And so this is the space, one of the spaces where we try to lift up and share the work that's going on with the organization, as well as support sharing the work of our funded partners. And so talking about engaging comms, a couple of things to remember. Early is best. We really are trying to be intentional about scheduling out our social media, as well as lifting you up and including you in what's going on and in spaces where we share the work that's going on with the organization. So as soon as you know about something and you want us to support you, we would ask that you reach out to us. I showed you those 4 outlets on social media and what the handles were. If you can't reach us on comms, communications at familyleague.org, the other kind of side way that you can do it, just tag us and we receive notification that we've been tagged in something, and we can share those as best possible. Always give us a heads up on events if you'd like us to attend, if you'd like us to participate. We are improving and expanding a rather robust community engagement calendar over the course of Transformation 2024. And so we'd like to be able to share with you in those opportunities. We also encourage you to tell your story and share it. The beauty of social media is you don't need to rely upon some managing editor or assignment editor to decide that your story is worthy to be posted. There's a lot of freedom and flexibility with social media. And so we encourage you, share your story, share the great work that you're doing, because believe me, there are people that are there and ready to lift it up and celebrate it. This is probably the most important one. I saved the best for last. Some of you, depending upon the funding source, you have to really follow this. But we would really appreciate that if you do any proactive media relations, if you develop a press release or anything of that nature, that you provide it to Family League so that we can provide prior approval. And we also ask that you provide us 24 to 48 hours turnaround time to do so. So if you're going to be engaging in a proactive media strategy and you think you're going to send it out on a Tuesday, that would mean if you could please provide it to us by Friday, it would make our lives a lot easier. We want to support you, and we have a deluge of work that sometimes it hits us that doesn't allow us to really be in the space in an intentional way. And so the other thing is that some of you all are funded through city funds, and there's actually an obligation depending upon where that funding source is that we then have to share it with the mayor's office of comms for their approval as well. And so that's kind of the logic behind the 24 to 48 hour request. And so I think with that, that wraps up the communications presentation. I'm excited to work with you all this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and the communications team for your presentation. Next, we'll have a presentation from our grants and contracts team, which I am so excited to be a part of. Our department, as many of you may know, handle the administration and compliance of your contracts with respect to the grants that you all have been awarded. The department is inclusive of myself as the director, Ms. Jillian Harp, who serves as our manager of grants and contracts, and 2 partnership managers, Clifton Williams and Cherie Moore, who handle various contracting programming portfolios from community schools, out of school time, expanded youth, Be More for Healthy Babies, and more. They will now provide you with an overview on reporting, site visits, compliance, and other contract highlights. As a result of our team growth and continued growing portfolio work we are actually actively recruiting for a contracts administrative position to join the team, and they'll be able to provide administrative support to us in all aspects of our contracting efforts. So now I'll turn it over to the team. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Clifton Williams, and I'll share some of our processes and requirements with you. So I'll start here with the administrative documentation. This is part of the initial documentation that's required at the very beginning of your contract or your contract relationship if you're new to Family League. The first set of documentation includes the certificate of insurance, the certificate of good standing, the conflict of interest form, and the independently audited financial statement or Form 990. These documents are required for us. They're compliance documents, and they're also required so that we can begin to issuing your initial advances. So we require these documents before we even, your signed contract, your signed award letter, accompanied by these documents to get those initial advances going. So that's the 10%, the maximum of 20%. But they're 10% each. There's a first one and a second one. Then we have the staffing and background check reports. There's going to be more information provided about this by Mr. Walsh, our legal counsel. But this is a very important document. And what's most important is that you complete it for all of your staff that engage with your constituents. That includes contractual individuals. So if you have a contractor working with you and they have employees who are going to be engaged with your constituents, there needs to be a background check completed on them. The standard budget. A lot of folks get confused about this standard budget. There are two components to it. There's the standard budget and there's also the expense reports. The standard budget in our grants management system becomes your expense reports every quarter once the standard budget is approved. So it's important that you get that standard budget in as soon as possible, once you have access to the grants management system and you're set up, so that you can prepare for your first quarterly reporting. And these documents, the standard budget is due. There'll be a deadline set for that. We'll send out documentation to confirm what that date is. Same thing with the initial scope of work. And then once they're set up, they're due in the first month following the end of a calendar quarter. So the standard budgets will be due, or the expense reports will be due on the 10th of the month. Now, some of our continuing partners may say, oh, Clifton, that was the 15th. Well, we had to change it based upon some of our partner demands. So it's now, the quarterly expense report is due on the 15th. The RBA, or the results-based accountability report, that's still due on the 15th of the month after the end of a quarter. The local hiring reports, there are some presentations that are going to take place on Wednesday and Thursday that will provide you with great detail about these reports and why they're required. But they're due the 3rd of the month. We're already behind on these, so we'll talk about that in those presentations on Thursday and Friday. So if you've not had an opportunity to sign up for them, or if you've not received their invitation, please email fundedpartnerships@familyleague.org and we'll get you invited, or I'll send the invitations to you. So again, those sessions are going to take place on Wednesday and Thursday from in the afternoon from 1 to 3. Can you go back one slide, please? And the very last thing on the monthly data reports. These are also very important to be completed on time, because if you're at the end of a quarter, well, every month, it's better to get those reports submitted every single month on time. The reason being is because that's the data that gets compiled quarterly to approve your quarterly report. And they're reviewed in conjunction with the quarterly RBAs and your scopes that you submit. So if you don't have those in, they can't, when I say they, the programs team and the data and evaluation teams cannot evaluate those forms. So, or those reports. So it's important that you get them in on time. And then from a payment perspective, if they're not submitted on time and they're not approved on time, it delays your remittance. So it's important that you get these things completed by the due dates that we establish here, so that you can be paid on time. It doesn't benefit us not to pay you. So we want to pay you. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also conduct administrative site visits, and there are two types. We have the informal site visit and we have a formal site visit. Last year, due to the pandemic, we did not conduct informal site visits. We did some telephone calls and sort of clarified some issues. And we did do formal site visits, but in a virtual manner. They proved to be pretty successful. We had a lot of compliance, a lot of folks complied. They submitted the documents on time. One of the challenges has been, because we were so used to doing this in person and we were reviewing the documents as the meetings went on, right there with you, the virtual platform slowed that process down tremendously because we got a lot of documents, a lot of pretty extensive documents that we had to review before we could, determine that they qualified and met the requirement. So we're rethinking how we're going to do that if we have to do it in a virtual environment this year. Next slide, please. So these are some of the local hiring reports. Again, there's sessions that are going to be held on Wednesday and Thursday in the afternoon that will explain more of this requirement. This is a requirement. It's a requirement that's based upon a law. And if you are a recipient of funding from the city of Baltimore, then you're required to complete these documents. And what it does is it helps the city determine if funds provided by the city are being used to support individuals working in the city or working for the city, or no, I'm sorry, living in the city. What am I saying? So it's important that these forms get completed. Again, we're already a little bit behind, so I'll be providing the forms to the partners to get us all caught up. But what's going to happen on Wednesday and Thursday is, and we've never done this before, we've invited the city to participate. And the person that's going to participate will provide, he's the person who oversees this process for the city, excuse me. So he will be providing great detail that had not been formally made available. So that'll happen on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon. They're 2 sessions. They're going to be the same pretty much, except for maybe, change, people asking questions. It'll be the same information shared, but if you miss something on the first session, you're welcome to join us for the second one. Okay. And I will turn it over to Jillian now.
Jillian, just a second. I just had one question for Clifton. If you could walk through the 20% again, Clifton.
So the 20% advances?
Yes. Could you
So there are 2 advances that get issued. One is issued when the award letter is executed. So you get your first 10% when the award letter is executed. You get the second 10% when you complete and submit those documents. And that's 10% of your award. So whatever you were awarded by Family League, it's 10% of that. So if you have a $50,000 award, you get $5,000 in one of those advances, then the next advance would be an additional $5,000. But it's based upon those requirements. And we will be sending out a letter that provides all of that detail via email that gives you explicit instructions on how to qualify for those advances.
And the next 10% comes when?
That next 10% comes when those documents are received. We get all of those pre-contractual documents that we listed previously. Can you go back a couple slides? Do you mind? They're all right there. Keep going.
And the only reason, folks, why I'm bringing this up, this is probably, I think, has been a point of questions when we have new partners have brought this to my attention. And I just want to make sure that, at least as it relates to this particular audience, we're being as clear and concise as possible.
Right. So these are those initial documents that we need right here listed above, not the staffing, background check, not the standard budget, not the scope of work, but these initial documents right here are the things that we need for that second advance. But again, you'll get a memo from us that sort of lays all of this out with all of the requirements to qualify.
Thank you, Clifton. I apologize, Jillian.
Oh, no problem.
Clifton, can I chime in? There's a question and a comment about why the expense reports have been moved up to the 10th. I'll field that question. The reason,
Okay.
Thanks. The reason is because our funders are pushing for us to report on time. Many of our funders have a required date for our reporting on the 15th, so it won't work out if we keep the date for our funded partners at the 15th, so we had to push it up to the 10th. There was another question in there regarding monthly data reports. One of the partners wasn't aware that they had monthly data reports. Is that a requirement for everyone across the board or just for specific partners?
Monthly data reports aren't required for every funded partner and program initiative. So if you haven't historically received a monthly data report, that's correct, you don't have one due. But some of our portfolios do have them. So they aren't across the board. So if you haven't seen it, don't be alarmed that you're missing a deliverable. It just isn't a requirement based off of the initiative that you're funded under.
Okay, and just to make one additional comment, for the folks who don't know who Kiana is our department head. She's the Senior Director of Finance, and our department reports directly to her. So she's our department head. Grants and Contracts and Finance is one team now.
All right, thank you, Clifton. My name is Jillian Harp. I'm going to talk about our grants management system, which is called Funding Track. So as you can see on this screen, this is the website for Funding Track. So this is the portal where you will submit all of your deliverables throughout the fiscal year. We always suggest that you use Chrome. Sometimes Funding Track does not display correctly on other internet browsers. So if you have Google Chrome, I would suggest that you use it in that internet browser. You will have the best functionality if you do that. Another thing about Funding Track is that whoever needs to submit your deliverables or whoever who needs access to your grant information should have a username and password in our system. So in order to request that somebody has a Funding Track registration, you will need to contact your partnership manager. So the partnership manager is either myself, Clifton Williams, or Cherie Moore. And you will send them the information of the person who needs a username. So you'll need to send their name, their title, their email address, and their phone number, and then what designation best fits the person that needs the Funding Track registration. So it's either oversight, program staff, or reviewer. And then in addition to obtaining new Funding Track registrations, if you need to disable a user, so if someone is no longer with your organization or they just no longer need access to Funding Track, also send that information to your partnership manager and we will ensure that that person is disabled from the system. So this is information about technical support for Funding Track. So if you have any system related issues, so if you have trouble logging in, like I was just saying, if you need a registration, if you forgot your password, if you're trying to submit a deliverable and you get an error message, if you have a question about what needs to be uploaded to report, anything technical related to Funding Track, you can email fundingtrack@familyleague.zendesk.com. We have a help desk associate, Chevy, who manages that inbox, and she's great at getting back with you, asking any more clarifying questions she might need to help address your problem and resolving it. And next, I'm going to pass the presentation to Cherie Moore.
Good morning again, everybody. I'm Cherie. Nice to see some of you by face. I'm going to discuss our background check process. I'm trying to speed it up because you all can read it, but anyone providing services, as Clifton said, or engaged under this contract who has contact with children must complete a national and state criminal history records check. This includes your subcontractors, your volunteers, your interns, and other partners. I see the interns isn't here, but we know that sometimes you all do get interns and they do have to have a background check as well. The names of all individuals must be listed in the staffing report and the background check completion dates as well. It's required for everybody who has contact. You will not upload the actual background check into Funding Track. You would just answer the questions that's there and list your staff as necessary. Copies of the officially approved background checks must be kept on file. So when we come around to do the site visits, you'll see that we'll be asking to see the actual background checks. Partners must have a written policy in place for how they will respond to situations in which criminal activity is disclosed. Confidentiality and releases. Confidential participant information that Family League asks for shall comply with safekeeping state and federal laws. Any participant information, including photos and videos, should not be shared with the third party without parental guardian consent. So hopefully you all have media releases in place if you do plan to send pictures of families and children. When issuing statements, press releases, or any publications associated with this grant, funded partners must obtain prior consent from Family League. So we ask that you just reach out to us and get that approval prior to. I'm now going to pass it to Ms. Kiana again for our finance department.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kiana Thompson. I'm Senior Director of Finance and Grants and Contracts. We'll be discussing your payments, payment schedules, no-cost extensions, and budget modifications. For the finance part of the department, we have 3 people. It's Nisel Moses. She's our senior accountant, and she's responsible for reviewing and approving your budgets and expense reports. She also processes the payments, and she fields inquiries regarding payments. So if you ever are looking for a payment or need to inquire about the amount of payment you receive, please contact Nisel Moses directly. Then we also have our accounting manager, Keena Lee. She's responsible for invoicing all of our funders, and she collects the supporting documentation for the Family Recovery Program. And then myself, I review and approve budgets and budget modifications, provide technical assistance and funding track if it's regarding budgets or expense reports. And as Clifton mentioned, I also manage the Finance and Grants and Contracts Department. I'm going to turn it over to Nisel Moses to discuss your payments.
Good morning. I am Nisel Moses, the senior accountant in the finance department, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the payments. Payments are issued within 30 days upon approval of all required reports for the quarter. Payment amounts are contingent on the expense report and the payment schedule within your contract. All payments are issued via EFT. Please ensure you remit expense reports by the due dates in Funding Track. Payment schedule. You will, as Clifton mentioned earlier, you will receive 6 payments. 2 of those payments will be your advance payments. The first 10% advance will be issued when your award letter is signed. Your second 10% advance will be issued when your contract is fully executed and all initial reports are approved. The first payment is your first quarter payment, which cannot exceed 40% of the total award. Your second payment, which will be your second quarter payment, cannot exceed 60% of your total award. Your third quarter payment cannot exceed 80% of your total award. And your final payment cannot exceed 100% of your full award. And Kiana Thompson will speak a little bit about the no-cost extensions.
Okay, so for no-cost extensions, since our funders do not allow those, we're unable to pass that on to our funded partners. When you make those requests, we won't be able to consider them or approve those for that reason. All funds should be spent by your contract end date. So if your contract end date is June 30th, you must have incurred all of the expenses for your award by that end date. Also, budget modifications are strongly encouraged to ensure that you fully spend your contract by your contract end date. If you ever run into an issue, maybe after the first quarter, you may have had some vacancies. Oftentimes underspending is due to staff vacancies. We encourage you to submit a budget modification request so that you can move those underspent funds to perhaps another line item. Or if you have an existing staff member that is fulfilling the duties of a vacant staff, you can also move that money to that person's salary. Next slide. So for budget modifications, please allow 2 weeks for the modification to go into effect. Modifications should be requested if the change is greater than 10% on a line item and funds are being allocated to a different category in the budget. So as I mentioned, let's say you have a vacancy, but you want to move that money to another position within the personnel section. It doesn't require modification because you're not crossing budget line items. But if you do move that underspending to, let's say, program expenses, it would require a budget modification if it's greater than 10% of the line item. For budget modifications, they must be submitted no later than 60 days from the end of the contract term. So most of our funded partners contract terms they end on June 30th, which means your budget modification must be submitted by April 30th, 2022. Next slide. And these are the steps for the budget modification. So in Funding Track, there's a button that says request modification, and you'll see it on your expense report. Once you hit request modification, I'll receive a message saying that someone has requested a budget modification. And then I'll open it up and determine whether or not it is necessary. If it is necessary, a budget modification template will be assigned to you. This is key because oftentimes when the template is assigned, people forget to complete that template, but that is key in order to continue on with the budget modification. So you must log into Funding Track and complete that template. So basically you will be filling in what you want your new budget to be. And it has to be every line item because it needs to total to your award amount. You can't just change the line items that you want to be changed. It has, whether or not the budget line is changing, all the line items have to be completed. And just please, when you save it, make sure that it equals your award amount or the budget modification can't continue. So then once you do that and you hit submit, then I'll review it. I'll just make sure that you made the changes that were in your request and then make sure that it equals your total award. And then that new budget will get approved and then it becomes your subsequent expense report. Next slide.
Okay, thank you to both groups for sharing these key components of contracting, reporting, payment, and compliance, which are extremely important to the success of our partnership. So again, from compliance to our funder, to your compliance to our organization as a partner. So these are critical components for you to definitely understand. So next we'll have a presentation from our legal advisor, Mr. Don Walsh, who will provide a detailed overview on the importance of background checks as a partnering organization and various components and requirements. I'll now turn it over to Don.
Thanks, Tawana. I'm happy to be here this morning and to have this opportunity to sort of talk about background checks and the reasons why we do them and why they're necessary. There always seems to be some questions every year that some entities have about, do we have to do this? What are the steps we have to go through? What are we looking for? And it's very important. And I tell all my clients, always blame the lawyer. In this particular case, you can blame the lawyer if you want to for why you have to do this, but the reality is it's the law. The reality is we are required to do this as a matter of law, as state law, as well as state regulations in terms of what we have to do in sort of protecting things. Because the law requires it, we have to make sure that all of our vendors and our partners in this process go through the same process, make sure that they have procedures in place to make sure that they are doing background checks, to make sure they have procedures in place for checking on those background checks and making sure that they have some sort of plan and procedure in place in the event that there ends up being an issue. If something comes up, some method of dealing with these different things. So as this first slide points out, it's the law, it's required as a matter of state law under family law article. So we tell everybody you're gonna have to do it. It crosses a lot of different places, but certainly anywhere where children are involved, it is required. The board in reference to this is the local management board, since Family League is considered to be the Baltimore City's local management board. We are required for ensuring that there's compliance with all these requirements along the way. Next slide, please. So not only must we make sure that the law is in place, but we've got to make sure that all of our funded partners comply with that law and they actually do the background checks. So that is part of the reason why you saw some of the previous slides, that there are requirements consistent with the contract, that you submit that information through Funding Track, that you make sure that you've complied, that you've completed these things. And we'll talk in a minute, most importantly, that you don't actually let anybody enter into the contract or start any work with children in any way until they've actually gone through the background check. You've received the information back to make sure that it complies, that this particular individual is appropriate for working with children, and that you let it go forward from there. The other thing that we encourage all partners to do is that if they have a situation where they have people who won't come in contact with children, that they at least consider whether they want to have background checks for all individuals who may be somewhere in that sphere, that they may overlap with that, and also kind of factor into all that the ultimate liabilities that could happen. And it's not really just about liabilities, it's about making sure that we take care of the children at the end of the day. God forbid anything should happen to any of these children. We don't want that to happen. So not only that's sort of the overriding thing in all this, not only is it the law, but it's the idea is we want to try and protect children wherever we can in the process. Get a next slide. And these are some statistics that we've been able to pull over the years about why it makes sense to make sure that this happened, and trying to protect children, trying to make sure that children are protected, and that's sort of the goal and the focus of all of this. 96% of the children who have been victims in these situations actually know the people who are working with them. There was a lot of publicity within the past month of a gentleman who went through various rec programs, and for whatever reason, background checks had not been provided, had not been checked in an effective manner, and he managed to work his way through a lot of rec programs. So unfortunately, these individuals are out there, and they find a variety of different places to go to find victims, and we would love to make sure that it doesn't happen to any of our funded partners, and that this we can find a way to make sure that we've eliminated this in the process. Next slide, please. So there's the who should have a background check. Anybody who's coming into contact with children. We saw the previous slide. It's all your employees, all your volunteers, all your interns, and all your subcontractors. And I know there's a handful of funded partners who actually subcontract some of that work. And if you are subcontracting it to an organization, as opposed to bringing in true independent contractors who are individuals, you need to make sure that that subcontractor also has all of their subcontracted employees or independent contractors. Any individual, any person who's coming in contact with the children, ultimately you have to do the background check on. That is one question that I always make sure that I address, because we got asked it in the past, is what about where my volunteers and my interns may be under the age of 18? There's no exception in the law for children who are under 18. So we still recommend that you still at least end up doing it. But nonetheless, you may get very limited background information back, which is probably a good thing. But at the same time, we are required to do it and make sure it's in place. So we have to do that. Now, just so everybody knows, I'm trying to file questions as I go along. Feel free to dump them in there. I'll try to answer them as I go along, if we do this. Okay. So there's a couple different phases that we talk about in terms of when we're doing the background check process. We just have to make sure that we factor in there's certain considerations. You have to confirm the information both before you submit it for a background check, and then confirm it once you get it back, and then go through the review process. A couple things that you have to keep in mind from a city standpoint. Baltimore City requires that you can only do a background check after you make some sort of conditional offer of employment. So you've made the decision that, yes, this person, I do want to hire them, or have them as a volunteer, or have them as an intern. You have to have that conditional offer to them first, subject to the fact that you will then do a background check on them. You can't do it before. You can let them know that there will be a background check that's being done as part of the process, just so that they are aware that that is part of the process. Hopefully that will eliminate anybody who may not otherwise clear the process. They just decide to walk away. But you can't actually do the background check until you've made that extension of an offer to them first. Next slide. In addition to making sure you comply with Baltimore City law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is a federal law, requires that when you do a background check on someone, you have to get their written consent for doing it. You have to tell them what you're going to use the information for, which is pretty obvious in most cases, but you have to do that. You have to have them sign a separate form for the background check that's separate from the application itself, and you get the written permission in the process to do that. And then in addition to that, in the event that you review someone's background check and you decide that it's something that you are going to ultimately reject that candidate, you have to give them a copy of the report that you used in the process as well. Let's just go back one slide to the confirmation for a second. There we go. There are a variety of vendors out there. Most vendors will be able to tell you what sorts of background checks they can do. They'll tell you they can confirm that they are doing the state check as well as a national check. Someone asked the question about state and FBI. The FBI presumably would be the national check. And yes, we do require that. The state requires that. And the concept is because, especially given where we are, Maryland is not a huge state. There are people who cross state lines to do a variety of work. So you need to make sure that you do the national search as well, because an individual could have been convicted in another state and it would not come up in a state search at all. So you need to make sure that the vendor you're using has the appropriate ability to come up with the background checks in the process. You have to make sure that you have appropriate social security numbers and actual legal names of the individuals. If there are any changes to the person's social security number, any changes to their name for one reason or another, we've seen that in a couple of different cases where individuals have changed their name, their last name, or dropped different portions. I see a comment, CGIS is no longer providing FBI as an FYI. You have to go to a third party. I know Family League has a list of potential third parties that you can go to. If not, I'm sure we can get one published out to everybody at different places you can look to verify that they can do the appropriate checks for you. Make sure that the investigations are done before the person obviously starts, and make sure there's nothing connected to them. When you get the records back, please make sure you check. Don't just simply rely on the fact that you got to check back a report back. Please make sure that the name is correct on the report you get back, social security number if it's on there, that they actually, the service, third-party service that did the check for you actually verifies that they have provided and done the right person to make sure that they do that. And then, of course, you're ultimately going to check to see if there are any positive hits for one reason or another. If there's anything that's a positive criminal record, you're going to want to verify what kinds of things you're looking for. Typically, we're looking to see if there's anything that's related to child abuse, abduction, any sort of neglect of a child, or any vulnerable adult is what they're looking for as well. There's a variety of different things. And if you see an offense, traffic offenses, obviously they're not going to have the same impact unless, of course, you're talking about somebody who is driving a bus or something like that, and that's a whole different story. But if you're talking about other offenses that have nothing to do, somebody filed a fraudulent tax return, it may not have any impact at all at the end of the day. And that doesn't mean that you have to reject that particular candidate. Next slide, please. So this slide and the slide after that, just a variety of the types of things that you may see that you want to take a look for to make sure that you are appropriately checking for various different offenses. Hang on one second, I just said, a simple redactor, actually put it back, John. Oh, and I'll let Family League tell you exactly what it is that they want back in terms of the actual report of the particular individual taking place. So the variety of offenses, by no stretch of the imagination have I covered everything. And every state has a variety of different statutory offenses that they might call them different things. But these are the general types of things that you want to look for: child abuse, contributing to any sort of conditions of a minor, any delinquency or anything like that, prostitution, any sort of thing where they might be using a minor for a variety of different things with drugs, drug offenses, pornography, any sorts of those types of crimes are the things that we are generally looking for, saying this person may not be appropriate to work with a child. There are various acts that have been put out by different states to eliminate a lot of minor crimes that may be shielded and no longer available. For instance, a lot of crimes dealing with marijuana, a lot of states have now put in place a variety of laws that allow you to exclude those offenses entirely, so you might not even see them. They're not something that we typically have to worry about. Next slide. If you find an adverse action, if you find something on there that is concerning, and if it's easy enough that you can confirm for yourself that this is not the person that you want, then you make sure that you've suspended any contact with that individual or that individual has with children. Obviously, make sure that that happens. But in addition to that, you would let Family League know as well that that has happened, that you've suspended this individual. When you let the individual know, you can go to the next slide. When you let the individual know, you're going to have to give them a copy of the report that you used that said that this is the adverse information. And we're letting you know that we are no longer going to be able to work with you in this particular requirement. And you also have to give them a copy, a summary of your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's not really credit, but it's considered a credit report because it looks into someone's background. And whoever the provider is that did the search for you, they should be able to give you that document. It's a federal form. It's standardized that we pass out and we provide to the individual when you reject them based on a report in the process. The only other thing that you have to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that you do these on an annual basis. There are different services that will monitor throughout the course of the year, and they keep a repository. So that basically means that anytime anything pops up, anytime that there is a particular crime that a particular person has been convicted of, or if they're charged with, they'll notify you immediately, so you'll be aware of what the situation is, so you can make a decision at that point. If not, you need to make sure that you're doing the annual reports because we need to make sure that on an annual basis we've complied to ensure that a particular individual no longer has contact with children, no longer is placed in a situation they should not be in to protect the children. With that said, I don't believe if there are any other questions that I need to, somebody flag them for me if there's any other questions that I need. I think we've got them all. Just scanning through.
Hi, Dan. I have a question that somebody asked. They said the population with whom we work are college age, 18 plus. Are we required to complete background checks on staff coming into contact with those young people?
If under the law, no. As a matter of Family League policy, I guess we'd want to, I'll leave that up to Family League. I think at a minimum, we'd want to know that all these children definitely are over the age, well, they're not even children at that point. All the individuals you're working with are over the age of 18. With the slide in the calendar year and when kids can start school, there are a lot of children who are still 17 that may have graduated from high school, and they are still protected under the law. They're still considered minors, and they're still somebody that you have to do a background check on.
Thank you. Another question is there a reason why you only request a CJIS and not an Adam Walsh?
No, CGIS typically is the one that we use, or we did use in the past. I saw somebody said that it no longer does it, only because they keep a repository going for everything, and they keep us updated on what's going on. I'm not familiar with the other report at all.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning. The Adam Walsh is the CPS investigation. So in the event that a parent or an individual has been brought in for a CPS investigation, founded or unfounded, that's considered child support. So it doesn't go on a criminal, it doesn't go on your CJIS, state or FBI if you haven't been charged, but you can have a CPS case that was open or closed that falls under the family annotated code. And my apologies, I work in Medicaid, so my stuff is a little bit overboard, but a lot of boards don't require the Adam Walsh, so you don't know if a person had a CPS investigation done. So I always ask about that because it doesn't specify.
Well, it's an interesting issue because the reality is we're supposed to protect against anybody who's been convicted of a crime. So you can be charged and you can ultimately, it can be steaded, it can be not guilty. And that would not be a disqualifying offense because technically we're only supposed to exclude people who have been convicted of crimes. It's the presumption of innocence that exists in this country. So a CPS investigation that doesn't necessarily result in a criminal conviction, I would suggest that we probably, unless Family League wants to require that or make that part of change its policy, as a matter of law, we're not required to do that at this point.
Okay, and just, I think this was already addressed, but the question says for background checks, are you requesting state and FBI?
And that's yes, yeah. The FBI would be the national check because you want it, yeah, that's why. Typically there'd be federal crimes, although the FBI reports pick up all the state crimes and those types of things. Not that it's exclusive, but the types of crimes that we're talking about that you typically would see that have some impact on children or vulnerable adults are usually state law crimes, not federal crimes. They can be federal crimes, but 9 times out of 10, it's a state law crime. And that's why you'd pick it up on a state law or in a state report.
Okay,
It's
thank
rare.
you.
It's rare they're federal.
Those are the only questions that I saw in the chat, but again, if you have other questions, please put them in the chat and we will address them.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So we are at the end of our session today. And so I just want to thank you. We want to thank you so much for attending today. As I shared at the beginning of the session, our goal today was to provide you with a thorough overview of the critical components to be successful in our partnership. And that was through our executive leadership, communications, finance, grants and contract, and legal lens. We like to also announce as well that we will be holding 2 local hiring information sessions on Wednesday and Thursday of this week at 1 p.m. to prepare you for the upcoming requirement of FY22 reporting. These sessions will guide you through this reporting process and provide you with specific details of what's required. If you can attend these sessions, it would greatly benefit you in preparation for the FY22 local hiring process. I want to thank our President and CEO, Damon Millard, for taking time out of his demanding schedule to join us today. We appreciate and value his leadership and guidance in continuing to grow our organization. I want to also thank you, say thank you to all of the other presenters as well, who are extremely vital to the work that we do day to day here at Family League of Baltimore. I want to again share our email address, fundedpartnerships@familyleague.org. So you may forward any questions or requests for information that you may have. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. Also, if you have any questions on our grants management system funding track, you can email those questions to fundingtrack@familyleague.zendesk.com. Again, that's fundingtrack@familyleague.zendesk.com. A training on Funding Track will be provided during our session on Thursday, August the 19th. So we encourage you to be sure to attend that day as well. As a reminder, these virtual sessions are being recorded and will be made available to each of you via email by close of business each day. All sessions will also be made available on our website on Friday, August the 20th. We are looking forward to you all joining us on tomorrow, where we'll be joined by the programs team, who will be sharing detailed information about our dynamic programs and professional development opportunities to help strengthen your organizations. As I stated earlier, 2 of our top partnering organizations, Keys and Powers and Beyond the Natural Foundation, will be presenting as well to share some useful information on their keys to success. We very much appreciate your attendance today, and we look forward to seeing you all on tomorrow. Thank you.
Be well, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye, everybody. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Have a great
Everybody,
Thank
have a
you.
good day.